Last week, I mentioned that there's three options to create a healthy and empowering perspective for experiences you didn't like. You focused on the lessons of your past, but you did not want to create fantasies or delusions because those are not sustainable. Hopefully, you felt that the honest lessons made your past make a little more sense. This week, we're focusing on forgiveness and starting to let go of the experiences you've been holding on to. Now, the only person you can control is you, so the only person you can forgive is you. That doesn't mean that others didn't do wrong. It just means your freedom begins where your control does. You can't control what anyone else does, but you can control the story you're living within. Every experience has two sides: what happened and what you perceive to what happened. That's shaped by who you're being in the moment. This week, focus on who you were being in the moment. That realization alone changes everything. It's just forgiveness from being about them to being about you. A Buddha said that hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That may sound extreme, and you may not want anyone to die, but the point is clear. Holding on to unhealthy thoughts and emotions about another person hurts you. You may be holding on because your ego wants to be right, because someone else has to be wrong. Now, you can be right or you can be happy, but you may not be able to be both. And if you have to choose, I encourage you to choose happiness. Healing creates new perspectives, and new perspectives create healing. They're like two sides of the same coin. And you may wonder, which comes first, healing or perspectives? Well, it's kind of like which comes first, the chicken or the egg? For our purpose now, start by changing your perspective, and the healing will follow. But when you heal, you become more empowered. The empowered version of you does new things and does old things differently, which naturally creates new outcomes. And as your nervous system begins to regulate, your reactions become less defensive and your responses less aggressive. I'm sure you've heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. Wounded people bleed on those who cut them and those who didn't. We've all done it, some more often and some more recently than others. And it's just part of being a human. We're emotional beings, and sometimes we don't use our emotions for good. We say or do, or don't say or don't do things that wound others, not because we want to, but because we're trying to protect ourselves. That's survival, fight or flight. And when the ego feels cornered and flight is not an option, your reaction is to fight. Now, if we've all hurt others, whether it was in defense or an attack, why do we assume we're innocent? My aunt likes to say we're all just trying to make it and figure things out. Everyone you know and every stranger you meet are carrying things mentally, emotionally, and in their bodies. Some talk about it, most bury it. But what's buried eventually surfaces through words, actions, and even illnesses. Researchers say that diseases are the symptoms of stress, and stress is just stuck energy in the body. Doing this work releases the stuck energy. And when the stuck energy gets released, symptoms start to lessen and potentially disappear. And when the symptoms are gone, so is the disease. Forgiveness isn't limited to creating healthy perspectives and healing. It also creates a new lifestyle. A lifestyle with less stress. A lifestyle with practices that help you manage stress in healthy ways. And a lifestyle with more capacity for stress. Well, pause now and listen to your answers to these three questions. How would life be different if I felt less stress? How would life be different if I managed stress quickly in healthy ways? And how would life be different if I had a greater capacity for stress? Forgiveness is a healthy way to relieve stress in your body and clear your mind. You won't need caffeine, sugar, alcohol, or comfort food to give you short bursts of energy and happiness. You'll start feeling naturally energized. And you'll choose what you eat or drink because you enjoy it, not to medicate yourself. Alcohol becomes part of a celebration, not a way to escape life. And foods become pleasures, not ways of coping. And you may even notice the change in how you express yourself, the clothes you choose, the way you carry yourself. You won't dress to impress. You'll dress coming from peace. You'll create a new identity through forgiveness. And you'll forgive parts of who you were and let go of the old identities tied to your pain. Now, I've noticed when women change their hairstyle, something usually inside of her changed too. Because hair is part of how she expresses her identity. Now, a woman with a mohawk lives differently, typically than a woman with long hair or one with a sharp bob. Hair often mirrors lifestyle, and lifestyle mirrors hair. Now, have you noticed new things that you've added or taken out of your life lately? What changes are already unfolding? Now, one thing I want to revisit is your old identities. There isn't just one, there's many. Who were you being in those painful moments? And what were you doing to contribute to those experiences? This is not to make you feel guilty. You were doing your best with what you knew. You'll need to forgive the versions of you who didn't know better, and even the ones who did know better, but went against their own knowing. I know from my own experience, there are plenty of times I knew better, consciously and intuitively, and still went against my knowing because my ego is a great influencer. And sometimes I wanted to do what was right for someone else, or I just wanted to be nice. I may have made it through the moment, but eventually the lessons caught up with me. And I'm sure there's still lessons the universe hasn't cashed in yet. This is just part of being human and figuring things out. But if we never risk or test what we believe, how will we ever know if we truly knew? When you begin the forgiveness work, you'll start to rediscover yourself. Without the weight of old conditioning, your thoughts, feelings, and your beliefs change. Fears that said, it's too risky. Doubts that whispered, you're not qualified. And beliefs that convince you to give up and settle. Those start to lessen their control over you. That's in a place grows confidence, self-worth, imagining, posture, and a new identity. Now, as you start to see how extraordinary you really are, your life changes. Challenges that once felt impossible become possible. People who used to disturb you become less important, or they just disappear. Your capacity for stress grows. The cup that seemed to always overflow will turn into a river. And like a river, you'll let stress flow through you instead of spilling it onto others. Forgiveness contributes to regulating your nervous system, bringing you back to homeostasis. And with homeostasis, your body starts repairing itself and healing. Life stops knocking you off balance so easily. Emotional wounds begin to close, and symptoms of suffering start to disappear. Life and experiences get lighter. And if you're wondering, will you ever finish forgiving? You won't. And if you think you've done all the forgiveness work possible, you'll have an experience that will remind you there's more work to do. So stay steady, keep doing the work, because forgiveness does not ever end. It's like hygiene for your mental, emotional and physical health. Now let's make forgiveness practical now. This week's work builds directly off last week's. This week's work is to revisit week 3's writings and forgive yourself of those experiences. Start with one lesson you wrote down that feels heavy and go through all the ones you wrote down. And if this work ever feels too heavy, do not rush to make the feeling go away. Stay with it just long enough to feel what's there. Then use the practice from week 1 to show your body you are safe. Forgiveness doesn't happen because we avoid pain. It happens because we stay present long enough to see it differently. Notice what you feel in your body. Maybe your chest tightens or a knot in your stomach. You don't have to do it perfectly. Just do the work. Let go of what you can let go of and be open to the possibilities of forgiveness. And as you're rereading what you wrote down in week 3, feel the emotions and replay the experiences in your mind. Then write down, I release the need to carry this pain. I forgive myself for who I was being. Like I mentioned earlier, forgiveness is not about who they are. It's about who you are being and recognizing you're the only person to forgive. And I get this may be challenging to take on. And it's an empowering step to do this work. Forgiveness is the next step in creating stories, memories, and experiences that will no longer control you. If it helps, write a letter to the version of yourself that you're forgiving. You can say everything you wish you had said, then close it with, I understand why you did what you did, and I forgive you. You don't need to send it to anyone or reread it. The act itself rewires the story. And if you don't do this work completely, next week's work will be difficult to comprehend, and the work will seem impossible. You're now halfway through the course. Keep doing the work. Keep your momentum going. Forgiveness doesn't end when you write the words. It deepens when you live them. This week, keep choosing to release what doesn't belong in your body anymore. Not because it's easy, but because you've decided your peace is worth the effort. Take a deep breath and make this promise to yourself. I will no longer punish myself for who I was. I'll use every lesson to become who I'm meant to be. That promise can change everything.